Morning, everybody. Glad to see all of you today. I was trying to think of what I might want to study next. I finished Philippians, as you know, so I went on and I thought, well, I'll do an Old Testament book. And I decided to do a book about women because many of the people listening to these videos are women, friends of mine. So I'm going to do a book about women, and the book I chose was Ruth. And I love this book. There's so much in it. There's so much to learn about it. And I'm going to start right with Ruth 1 and just read a few verses here. This is Ruth verse 1, or chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, I think, or 5 I'll read. Okay. In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a severe famine came upon the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah left his home and went to live in the country of Moab, taking his wife and 2 sons with him. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. Their 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in the land of Judah, and when they reached Moab, they settled there. Okay, let's stop there for 1 minute, and let's just go over a few things that were mentioned here. You might think in the beginning you can just skip over this, but there's some really important stuff here. The first important thing says, in the days when judges ruled in Israel. If you've ever read the book of Judges, you know that this was not a very nice time. The judges back then were not judges like we think of them today. They weren't the judges who maybe preside in a courtroom or something like that. No, the judges were more political and military leaders who emerged. And most of them were corrupt. Some of them were good. Deborah, for example, was a very good judge. But they were few and far between, the good judges. This was a big time of unrest. If you look at the book of Judges, one of the key verses of the book of Judges is 17:6, which says, in those days, Israel had no king. So the people did whatever seemed right in their own eyes. So this was a time that everybody was kind of doing their own thing. Whatever they thought was right, that's what they did. So it was not an easy time to live. So here they are in Bethlehem where they live, and the judges are ruling. So it's the other thing is one judge after another. When one of them died, another one emerged, kind of thing. So it was a time of upheaval. And then on top of that, the second part of that verse says there was a famine in the land. So now they got 2 problems. They got a crazy kind of system here, and then besides that, they have a famine. So there isn't a lot of food. So Elimelech, he decides, hey, the best thing we can do here is leave and go somewhere where there's food. And Elimelech and Naomi, they lived in Bethlehem. And that would be on the west side of the Dead Sea. They decided to travel about 50 miles. They went up north of the Dead Sea, and then down the other side of the Dead Sea on the other side was where Moab was. So that would be about 50 miles or so. They were from Bethlehem, and here they call themselves Ephrathites. Ephrata was just another name for Bethlehem, kind of an old-fashioned name for Bethlehem. We remember in Micah, the prophecy of Jesus said, blessed are you, Bethlehem Ephrata, right? Because Jesus was going to be born in Bethlehem, and that was part of the prophecy that Micah was giving about the town. So it's very, very important that they were from Bethlehem. Later in the story, that will be very important. And so there are some clues here that something's coming, okay? But like many stories in the Bible, and like many of our lives, there's good, but it comes out of bad. So what happens next is in verse 3 to 5. Then Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with 2 sons. Now that would be very important because the man of the family was the one who was the protector, the savior of the family. It was his name that meant everything. It was him that owned the property. You had to really have a man of some kind. So once Elimelech died, Naomi was okay because she had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. So she stayed there quite a while. We don't know when Elimelech died. He might have died on the trip, or he might have died when they first got there. The Bible doesn't tell us that. It just says that they lived there 10 years. So it says Elimelech died and Naomi was left with 2 sons. The 2 sons married Moabite women. One married a woman named Orpah and the other a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone, without her two sons or her husband. So here's the thing. She'd been living there about 10 years. Her sons had married these foreigners. They wouldn't have been Jews. They would not have had her religion. They would not have had her customs. But her sons married because they were living there. And they had been there like 10 years, so who knows how old the boys were. Doesn't mention anything about grandchildren. So we're assuming there are no children coming out of these marriages. So here is Naomi in a foreign country by herself. All of her blood relatives have died. Her husband, her sons. She is basically alone. She has these two daughter-in-laws, but they're not blood relatives, right? So we don't know. She must have been feeling pretty afraid. And she was homesick, and she was maybe feeling like God had kind of turned his back on her. And don't we all feel that way sometimes when things get bad? You know, we're lonely, we feel forsaken. If you're feeling that way today, I'm here to tell you that it's not true. There are people who love you, and certainly there is a God who loves you. And God had a plan for Naomi. Naomi could not see it. If she looked at the circumstances, it was dire. But God knew what he was doing, and he was going to bring great glory out of this situation, a wonderful future, wonderful blessings for Naomi. But at this time, she can't see it at all. Kind of that way today, staying home, aren't you? Where it's looking pretty dire when we listen to the news. But we have to trust God has a plan, and not only that he can bring good out of any situation, especially a situation as dire as Naomi. So we're going to get back to this story at another time, but for today, I'm just wishing you a wonderful day full of God's love and peace. Have a good one. Bye-bye.